In the early 1900s, there was a pursuit going on of the South Pole amongst explorers. And I want to compare the path taken by two Britishers, Robert Scott and Ernest Shackleton. Perhaps some of you are aware of these stories, but there is a particular point of comparison I want to make. So with Robert Scott, he actually makes it there. He ends up being the second person on the South Pole after Roald Amundsen. And the only thing is that he pushed himself way beyond the appropriate limits. The weather conditions were really bad, and he just judged that he and his team would just find a way there and find their way back. They did find their way there. They did plant the British flag, but on their way back, they perished. They were not able to make it, and he left behind these diaries of heroic pursuit and of deep reflection about how he's won, even though he's now realizing that it's coming to an end and there won't be a rescue party and he's dying. And so there are these really powerful and plaintive diaries from him. Now compare that with Ernest Shackleton. In Ernest's case, the point is the game had already been in some ways lost because Roald Amundsen had made it there, Robert Scott had made it there. In his case, he decided to set a different goal. That goal a couple of years later was that he was going to, with his men, cross the Antarctic from one end of the continent to the other, from sea to sea, by foot. And that was going to be his achievement. Except in his case, just like with Robert Scott, by the time he gets closer to the South Pole, the weather turns really bad in a way that is quite unexpected. And he and his men in that moment realize that they're going to actually lose their ship. And for the most part, they can continue to pursue going down that path, but it was a wreck. The whole expedition was a wreck. So what does Ernest Shackleton do? In his case, he changed his goals. And his goal became not as much to cross the Atlantic, in a hero's journey as an explorer, but instead to get his men out safe and sound from there. All 28 of them. That was his goal. Get all 28 of them out from there. And that story of the next, what ended up taking 18 months for him to be able to get all his men out from there is epic. It's called The Endurance, named after the ship that they took. And it's a powerful book, it's a powerful movie, it's just a powerful chapter in history. It's interesting because when he finally got back victoriously to England with all his men, he was forgotten very quickly, at that time. And the British public just lauded, and applauded the heroic feats of Robert Scott, the other explorer who had perished, but who had made it to the South Pole. And then about 70, 80, 90 years later, as Britain has looked back at its history, and as more has been discovered about the leadership of these two people, well, the historians now have gone back and revised their view and realized that, my heavens, this Ernest Shackleton, by switching his goal and the manner in which he kept the morale up and the manner in which he persisted and just fostered so much resilience for his people and the commitment that he brought to that moment and the success he finally had with getting all of them out there is deserving of the greatest plaudits about leadership. And he has been voted in one of the polls in Britain as the 11th most admired Britons in history. And so I want to offer the story up to you because there are moments at times in life and at work where we have to substantially revise our goals, where we have to anchor deeply in what our true purpose and our true values are, where the conditions from the outside cannot be controlled, and sometimes they lead to dramatic turbulence from the outside. And in moments like that, well, who do you want to be? There is the Robert Scott path, and then there's the Ernest Shackleton path, and then there's this lesson we can learn about how history will smile at you if you're able to adapt your goals, if you are able to be humble enough to realize in a certain moment that certain things have to be let go of. But on the other hand, certain new heroic pursuits can be taken on and can be persisted with for 18 months to get you to where you need to be, even when all hell is breaking loose on the outside.